Hey, what's going on everyone? Today I have a very exciting lens to talk about. We're going to be talking about the brand new Sony 50mm 1.2 G Master lens. Now, starting off with this lens, we are able to open up to a 1.2 as our maximum f-stop, and then our minimum f-stop is going to be an f16. It's not the most lightweight 51.2 on the market, but it is going to come in at 778 grams, so it does have a pretty good size to it for being a 1.2. And then also its minimum focusing distance is going to be 40 centimeters. On the top thread, we are going to get a 72mm threading. So a lot of people out there already have these size filters. They're very, very common. And it's nice to see that it wasn't one of the larger ones, especially being a 1.2. You hear that, you think it's gonna be a pretty large lens itself. We do have two customizable buttons. So we have, we can choose one for like autofocus hold, and then the other one you can program to a variety of different things in the camera menu. Being a G Master lens, we also get an Aperture Ring. So this is gonna give us f1.2 all the way to f16. And if you flip it over to the A mode, then you're able to control the Aperture Ring directly from the camera. One thing to also note with the Aperture Ring, it also is de-clickable. So you can have a smooth, nice aperture on it on the side. On the side as well, we get our autofocus and manual focus switch. This lens is constructed of 14 elements and 11 groups. We are getting an 11 blade rounded diaphragm. So 11 blades on the diaphragm is going to give you very, very circular bokeh, and being at a 1.2, you're just going to completely be able to annihilate the background. So it's something that I am looking forward to shooting. Now, one thing to keep in mind though, when you are shooting a 1.2, for those of you who like that blurred out look, if you're taking a portrait of someone at f1.2, if I got the eyes in focus, the tip of the nose isn't in focus, and then even probably the side of the head and back is not going to be in focus. So if that's the look you're going for, great, but if you are doing portraits, you're probably going to want to stop down slightly. This lens has 3 XA elements. Now what that stands for is extreme aspherical elements, and we also get the nano AR2 coatings as well as fluorine coatings. Now what all those are doing basically, that's going to help with flaring, ghosting, chromatic aberration, and then the fluorine coating, you've seen this in other lenses as well. But what that is helping with is like smudges, dust, dirt, anything just to protect the outside of the lens. And typically with the fluorine, they put it on the front element and the back element only. This lens also is taking advantage of 4 XD motors. What that stands for, extreme dynamic linear motors. Now, basically this paired with the Sony autofocusing system, we're gonna get a very, very fast and reliable autofocusing system. Other than that, another good thing to note about this lens is that it also is going to be weather resistant, which is really nice. So not too many of the cameras are, the best weather sealed, but it's nice to know that Sony is making an effort to put it in their lenses as well. So those are the brief specs we're going over today. We're here with Kinsey, and we're back at Mayfield Park, as you can probably hear some of the peacocks in the background. So let's jump right into it. And we are back at Precision Camera, and it's time for the final thoughts on the 50-1.2 G Master by Sony and what we overall thought about it. So my shooting experience with it, first thing that I noticed out of the box for a 1.2, it had a really, really good size to it and really good feel. Build quality has always been something that I feel like Sony excels in, so I'm really excited with all the G Master stuff that they're putting out recently. So that's the first thing that I do want to talk about. Now, it does have the XD motors inside of them, and Sony, in my personal opinion, has always been known for their low light performance, but other than that, their autofocusing has always been top tier. Now, it could have been user error, but there was a lot of instances in the photos that I was taking. I like to take photos in the continuous autofocus mode in the Sony cameras because it will detect the eye and track it the whole time, and then I can just snap photos off. And for the most part, almost all of my shots are in focus, especially during the daytime. So I've never had that issue, but on this 51.2, there was a lot of instances where it says it was on the eye, but right when I took the photo, it just like snapped and focused on the nose. Now, that is a minimal distance from, the tip of someone's nose to their eye, especially if they're angled and not looking straight on. But one thing to keep in mind is that you are shooting wide open at a 1.2. So that depth of field is very, very shallow. So yes, a lot of the images are usable, especially if it front focused on the nose. But for a $2,000 G Master lens, I expect that to be the sharpest photo that I can possibly get. Now, that being said, that could, like I was mentioning, be user error, just how I was shooting, or maybe it was a pre-production lens, I'm not too sure. But the images that were in focus, that actually hit the eye right on, those were some of the sharpest I've seen. So I was overall very, very impressed with the sharpness of the lens. Just the focusing, I felt like it was missing some of the times. Another thing that I did notice was the vignetting, and that was something that I really do want to talk about. So we were taking a photo of, I guess it's like a garage, and the 1.4 versus the 2.8, there was a huge amount of vignetting, and not even like darker in the corners, but it also seemed like the center was overcompensating, so it was a little bit brighter. I put this into Lightroom, and obviously there's not a profile in Lightroom yet for this 50.1.2, but I went ahead and I threw the 50.1.4 Zeiss profile on there for the lens corrections, and it cleaned it up no problem. So just one thing to keep in mind when you're shooting at the 50.1.2, you are gonna get a good amount of vignetting in the edges, which is expected, but one thing I did want to talk about. So another thing that we did test as well was backlighting situation, see how it handled ghosting and flaring. We were shooting Kinsey backlit, and those were actually some of my favorite portraits of the whole entire session, and it handled it just well, no issues whatsoever. That's even without using a lens hood. So overall happy with how that handled ghosting and flaring. And then the very last thing that I do want to talk about this lens is going to be for the videographers out there. Now, we didn't test this one in our test that we did, but I've seen a lot of videos showing that this lens is really bad at focus breathing. And that's unfortunate because the 50.1.2 G Master comes out, and it's not an inexpensive lens to purchase. And they add the Aperture Ring on there, which is great, if you like that manual feel for shooting photos. But a lot of videographers love this feature as well, especially since it was de-clicked. But now I have a lens that is just horrendous at focus breathing. That is an unfortunate downside. Now, the lens as a whole, overall, would I purchase it for photography? Personally, yes. I love the 50mm focal length. I was able to get some nice up-close portraits, be a little bit more involved with the model. But then as well, if I wanted a little bit more street style, get the scenery that we were at, I was able to do that as well. So I love the focal length. If I was doing this for photography, 100% I'm buying this lens. But for my videographers out there who are looking for a 50mm focal length, personally, just because of the focus breathing, I'm gonna have to say it's a no from me. But I still think it's a phenomenal and very, very, very sharp lens. So let me know what you think of the 50.1.2 down in the comments. If you're gonna be picking one up, what you love about this lens, what you don't love about this lens. And remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on our next video.